Well, shifting developments in Iran, the negotiations hit another snag with the U.S. travel plans to Pakistan now off. We have Professor Chris Lowe joining us live now. He's the director of the Middle East Studies at the University of Utah. And Chris, first of all, what's the latest? What's the latest things you're hearing after the U.S. backed out of heading to Pakistan?
Yeah, so we're in another sort of stalled pattern. Iran has put forward a new proposal, and I'll just try and walk through the sort of key takeaways with you. So Iran's proposal offers to end the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, but without addressing its nuclear program. So the idea is that the discussions would be deferred on that issue. So you'd have a longer time frame extending the ceasefire so that the parties could address all of the components for a lasting peace. And that would also include a halt to the hostilities between Israel and Lebanon and Hezbollah. Now, the nuclear talks would, of course, come only after the U.S. lifts its blockade on Iranian shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The plan also called for $2 million tolls per ship in the Strait of Hormuz for Iran's reconstruction. Now, obviously, for President Trump, this is a non-starter. These are really maximalist asks on the part of Iran. So this plan has been passed via the Pakistani mediators, but gains no real traction. Trump is holding a meeting in the Situation Room today to discuss next steps. And I think this really just leads us to the question of really who holds the leverage going forward.
How does that work in the Strait of Hormuz with Iran saying it's blocked, they're charging people, and the U.S. is in charge as well? How is that working?
Well, in point of fact, no one's in charge, right? So Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz. What they're trying to do, they've claimed that they've mined at least a portion of the strait. So you have territorial waters that include the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Iran. And so they're trying to force vessels to come close to their shoreline into their territorial waters, and they want to be able to monitor that traffic and to collect fees and tolls, right? So they're establishing a new precedent that did not exist before this war. And I think that this is really the sort of the fly in the ointment. The Trump administration wants to curtail Iran's missile capabilities, its nuclear program, but Iran, by seizing the Strait of Hormuz, has sort of dramatically shifted the geopolitical leverage. So they now have a sort of bargaining chip that they previously did not have. And so the Trump administration finds itself in a very awkward position. So back in 2015, of course, President Obama brokered a deal on Iran's nuclear program, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. But of course, Trump backed out of that in 2018. And so now, after this war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, Trump is now trying to get back to essentially where we were between 2015 and 2018, but now with this added dimension of the fact that we can't really open the Strait of Hormuz unilaterally. And of course, now the Trump administration has blockaded Iranian ports. So it's a standoff. So both sides are basically blocked from their optimal position, which would be the free flow of trade and free flow of energy.
Well, and with the president having a meeting in the Situation Room today, I mean, the main topic for him is the nuclear weapons. No nuclear weapons ever for Iran. But we also have the Strait of Hormuz and oil as a major factor, and it just seems like a stalemate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the issue, is that Trump continues to extend the ceasefire, and in the process, Iran has gotten quite comfortable in this situation. I think this new Iranian leadership feels that it now has leverage over the Trump administration. There's real time pressure. I think it's very clear that President Trump doesn't want this war to continue indefinitely. I think there are very large economic consequences, in part because of the energy crisis. And so Iran feels like they can really press the advantage here. The Wall Street Journal has reported that some 4.6 million barrels of Iranian oil have actually evaded our blockade. Over the weekend, Trump claimed that Iran only has some 3 days left before its oil storage is full and basically its oil fields need to be shut down. But again, the pressure is kind of symmetrical. Yes, Iran is facing these pressures, but the Arab Gulf states and the United States and the global economy is also facing those energy impacts. And I think that that's something that I would really stress to your viewers. I don't think in the U.S. media we've heard as much about this, but globally the conversation has gotten quite dire about the oil supply.
So is there any path that could end this war? Or I guess what's your answer? Is there a possible path that could end it soon?
Yeah, I think there's suboptimal options at this point. So, I tried to kind of make a list of these. So one, Trump could lift sanctions on Iran. Trump could agree to a worse nuclear deal. Trump could leave Iran with some degree of control over the Strait of Hormuz. And I would just hasten to add here, it's unclear if Trump can return the Strait of Hormuz to its free pre-war status. And of course, Iran is also asking in these negotiations for U.S. withdrawal from Gulf bases and a series of demands on Israel to stop its war operations as well, which is unclear if Trump can entirely deliver. Now, the other end of the spectrum is Trump and Israel could resume major attacks, bombing campaigns on Iranian infrastructures. Now, yes, the United States has air supremacy and could continue to do that, but then the consequence becomes a very protracted economic crisis, an oil supply crisis, inflationary pressure, a lack of supply of petrochemicals, fertilizer shortages, plastic goods, again, inflationary pressures that don't last just weeks, but months and even years. So the options for President Trump are bad and worse, I would say.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like any of them are going to happen soon.
No.
Right. Okay. Professor Chris Lowe with Middle East Studies Center at the University of Utah, thanks so much for clarifying many situations for us involving Iran and the United States. Thanks.
Thanks so much for having me.